Kiss the Water, which is, saying it's a documentary, it is a documentary, but it's a very sort of interesting lyrical documentary. It's a story of a very, very famous famous fly. I'm not a famous fly fishing. I'm a fly fishing. Anyway, fine. So Megan Boyd, and what she did was
Do you want to start again?
I am doing it now.
Okay.
Stop interrupting me, unless you want to come over here and do the reviews.
Is there a problem with interrupting then, in general? Would you say interrupting is a bad thing? I think you do.
Stop tweeting during.
No. My hands are up.
Yeah,
My
your
hands are
phone
here.
was ringing.
My hands are here.
Okay, Megan Boyd, who was famous, very, very famous, for tying fishing flies, handcrafting fishing flies. Are you interested at all in fishing or salmon fishing or anything? Or?
Not really, no.
Okay.
So how famous can you be for tying flies?
Well, within the world of fly
ties.
fishing, of fly tying, she was about as famous as she could get. And to the point that she ended up making flies specially for Prince Charles, who was a kind of huge admirer of her work. And what the documentary does is it looks at her life through a number of different manners. One of them is there's this sort of beautiful sort of location photography, and we see highlands, and we see streams, and we see salmon. Another is that we have these interviews which take place at their own very, very unhurried pace. People talking in a very reflective mood. And then on the other hand, you have these animations, which are very expressionist and sort of swirl between something which is a representation of of the fly dancing on the water, and then at one point the fishes turn into people. So it's a whole melee of things going on in order to evoke this central idea, which was that there was this very, very talented craftswoman sitting there making these flies. And the great irony of it was that firstly, she didn't like fishing, and she couldn't stand the idea that what she was doing would ever be used to kill fish. And secondly, as she herself said, nobody understands why the salmon may or may not take this particular fly. And you're not doing it to attract the salmon, you're doing it to attract the fishermen. Here's a clip.
They couldn't phone her for orders. Megan had no telephone. If she was going out, she left a notepad on a seat beside the front door. And if she wasn't in when they came, they wrote down what they wanted.
Money used to be left under there. Nobody touched it.
Nobody touched it.
No.
We just knew she was there.
She preferred the solitude. But she was never alone. She had her seasons, she knew she was going to be busy from the spring through to the end of the summer. Then she knew she'd be quieter in the winter time.
And that's pretty much the tone of the documentary. All the way through, it's in that kind of, slightly sort of musing, very gentle reminiscence. And yet what it does is it does get below the surface of the water. Now, it's not entirely successful. There's an underlying metaphor which is kind of overworked, which is because of the whole Prince Charles thing. There's a sequence in which it attempts to sort of make a comparison between Charles and Diana and the salmon being hooked, and there's a bit in which the animation does it, and that doesn't work. And it's almost as if up until that moment, just all the individual ripples on the pool have worked very well, and they just try and push it a little bit too far, and it's like, okay, back off a little bit. But for the rest of it, it's a very, very interesting portrait of somebody who is creating this strange... there is something mystical about... And people often talk about this, the mystical thing about fishing. You ever read that book, Salmon Fishing in the Yemen?
Yes.
Which is kind of like Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, but with fish. And there's that same thing about, the whole thing is, the mystery, the magic, the strange mystique, the fact that actually nobody really understands it, and there's a kind of Zen mastery in the whole thing. Well, the documentary is very affecting in that it kind of gets towards all of that dust, but it does it in a way which is poetic and lyrical and lilting. I have to say, I went into it thinking, to be honest with you, I'm not overly interested in this subject, and I don't know how good, but just as a piece of filmmaking, I thought it was very, very well done, and very interesting, and very lilting.
A little bit niche.
Well, actually, the interesting thing about it is that it's less niche than you'd think, because it is nominally a documentary about salmon fishing, but it wouldn't just, what I was trying to say was, even if you're not interested...
So it's not actually about salmon fishing?
No, it's actually about a shark. It's what it's actually about, Simon, yeah.